What's up, GTM News listeners? Thanks for tuning into this episode. This episode, I'm pulling a clip from a recent event I did all around B2B outbound. And this conversation is with Zoe Hartsfield, and she talks about conference follow-up and really how to maximize conferences. That's probably one of the top, cost marketing and sales when it comes to like a specific event you do, right? Going to a conference, whatnot. And Zoe has a bunch of really insightful ways to connect with folks, to follow up with them, build a relationship, provide value. Really cool thoughts, especially since conferences are just a great way to obviously build relationships, meet folks. They're also super expensive, so you want to make sure you get your ROI out of them. So Zoe, thanks so much for sharing. Let's listen in on my conversation with her. All right, we got Zoe here today. Hey, Zoe.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for coming on. And Zoe, honestly, there's probably like 20 things I could ask you to share about, but we have you on the dock to talk about how to maximize conferences and booking meetings at conferences. So let's dive right in. What are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts, but I think the real trick about like conference and event follow-up, maximizing the value of those events, like 90% of what you need for follow-up to book a demo happens before the event occurs. And just like anything else in sales, like whether you're, prepping for cold calls or demos or presentations, like the power really is in the prep. So I kind of want to talk about how do you prep for a conference, for a wraparound event that usually happens at a conference, like a happy hour your company throws on the back end of something like a SaaStr or an inbound where you're inviting prospects. And the way that you prep is going to depend on the type of event and your specific organizational structure. But I have a couple tips that I used as a rep and frameworks that I'll offer, and hopefully people can kind of take them and apply them to their situation. So my first tip is you should be working, like make marketing your best friend and figure out who the heck is going to be in the room beforehand. And then find out, can I invite my prospects? So for a conference, maybe you can't invite people to the conference itself. But if your team is throwing a happy hour the first night of the conference, you can invite your prospects to that happy hour. So you should be coordinating with your marketing team. Hey, this is my top list of accounts. These are the people local to that city. I would really like an invite to these 3 people. Can we make sure that we send it out? I'll send it out personally. However, you can coordinate that with your team. It's just really important that like, if you have the opportunity to be in person and be in front of your prospects, like be in front of them. And they don't necessarily have to be attending the conference. If they're a local, like I recently went to a conference and we threw a dinner on the back end of it. And there were 3 prospects that we invited that were top tier accounts that weren't at the conference at all, but they were, locals to that city. So take advantage of being in person whenever you can. The thing about if it's a conference is you may not get to see the entire, invite list. Even if you're a sponsor, you're not going to see all 10,000 people who registered, but you can definitely see who's sponsoring the conference. So I would say go to the conference website and look through every single sponsor, cross-reference that with your account list. Okay, I know that 15 of my top accounts have a booth at this conference. And then try and figure out, okay, like maybe their sales leader is going to be here. Maybe not your perfect prospect will be there, but how can you get in front of that logo and start building a relationship? So I would make note of every single potential account that is going to be sponsoring that conference and get in front of them. And then I would also invite people from those logos to your wraparound events as well. Even if you can't get like your number one prospect, maybe you can get the sales manager and you sell to directors of sales, or maybe you can get their marketing manager, but you sell to rev ops. Can you get an in with these companies? And yeah, the conference website is like a great way to do a little bit of that, like back channeling, finding some of those top accounts and cross-referencing it with your list. You should also go visit their booths and say, what's up? I would not go to their booth and pitch ever. I think that's kind of rude personally. Like they're trying to sell, you're trying to sell, I get it, but like go say hi, listen to their pitch, have a conversation, invite them to your happy hour. That's a good way to start building some relationships. But yeah, like the magic of follow-up is having a reason to follow up. And there are 2 things you need. One, I would suggest you build your follow-up sequence, at least the framework of it, before the conference even happens. Have like a sequence skeleton or, your 3 touches that you want to do. Have something loosely written before the conference occurs so that when you get back the next day, you can start running that sequence. But you also need to be able to create a reason to follow up. And I kind of have 3 C's that I use for memorable follow up. One is conversation. If I have a really good conversation with somebody, I'm taking notes on my phone. I love to ask the question, what's something you're looking forward to in the next 90 days? And somebody might be like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon, or, oh, my daughter is having her first baby, or, oh, whatever. Put that in the notes and then put a calendar reminder on your calendar. If they say, hey, my kids are going back to school in 2 weeks, I can't wait, I'm going to get a break. Now you have like a piece of relevance and like personalization that you can mention just super briefly in your email when you follow up with them of like, oh yeah, we talked about this. Like, I hope the kids are enjoying the week back at school or something. Like something legitimate that you talked about. Don't stretch it too far. Don't get weird with it. But I've had a lot of success asking people what they're looking forward to and then sending them like a good luck the day before their marathon or something like that. So conversation notes are critical. I keep them on my phone. Content. Can I take a picture with the person? Can I film a video with the person? I'm so sorry. I don't know what Zoom has done with this update.
I love that.
It always gives a thumbs up. It's gotten weird. But can I take like a piece of content with them that I then can send to them afterwards? I love recording a video, chopping it up into something that they could then post themselves. Like if I could get a video of them like giving me their elevator pitch or something like that, give it to my editor, have them chop it into like a TikTok style content, and then send it to them a week later and be like, hey, just like, we made this for you, no pressure to use it, but I wanted you to have it because you looked so good and you sounded so great. And I think this is a great piece of content. Great chatting with you, whatever. So you have a reason to follow up. You're giving them something. And then the third thing would be context gifting. So similar to the conversation and the content, if you talked about something, if they were like, oh, that thing I'm really excited about is my first granddaughter is going to be born in 3 weeks. Can you send them like a onesie or something? There's interesting ways to use direct mail after interacting with somebody in person, using some real personalization and again, having a reason to follow up. But you need to create that follow-up moment when you're in person. Be thinking about the follow-up as you're talking to them. I prefer to have a meaningful conversation and hit them up about a demo after the event, but I've also had success booking a demo right on site if it makes sense. But if I'm going to follow up with them after the event, I better have a reason to. So you want to create one of those memorable moments. And I leverage those 3 C's: conversation, content, and context gifting. What am I at with time? I've been rambling.
You've been great. This is awesome. You got about 1 more minute. I just love, first of all, just like some of the 2 things that stood out so far is like, number one of the best questions as like to be a good friend, a non-judgmental friend, is just ask somebody like what they're looking forward to in the future. And I love like, that's a great like way just to build a relationship with somebody, to figure out what they're excited about. Oh, I'm having technical problems now. So I love that. And then also having the content, you're giving them something of value. Like that's just so cool. And I mean, it takes a little bit of effort, like as far as creating content for them. So much of folks are, create content at an event for ourselves, which is great. But I love how you kind of turn that upside down and giving it to them. Really powerful stuff. Anything else in the last minute you want to share with the audience that we haven't talked about?
I guess like the recap of like, if you take away, 3 things from this is like, partner with your marketing team to identify those top accounts ahead of time, research who's going to be in the room. And one of the best things we did at Apollo is we started identifying top prospects for our own hosted events. So we just put like a little sticker on their badge. That's it. Just like a little sticker. And that's how we know like, oh, this is a top account. And so anyone on the team who's talking to them is just like aware of that as we're chatting. It doesn't necessarily mean that we approach the conversation super differently. It just means that we're like thinking about it in terms of, okay, like we've identified this person as somebody who would probably be able to use our tool. So that may shift the conversation slightly. And then finally, I love telling people what the subject line of my follow-up email is going to be. And I usually use like an inside joke that we created during the conversation. So if we were talking about it and they were like, oh, like I got these hot pink running shoes for my marathon, my subject line for when I follow up with them is hot pink running shoes. And it's like, I'm going to try and take a note of something that they said during the conversation as the subject line for the follow-up. And that's just something I keep in my phone notes.
Oh, Zoe, so good. Awesome stuff. I'm going to rewatch the recording of your session for sure. Just some really cool takeaways along with Will and Mandy. Thanks again for coming on, Zoe.